Hi everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids. They have added this is the best set of champions being added to the game this week in the upcoming patch for the upcoming fusion. These are the best champions that they've added to the game that I can remember. Like, we have an insane set of champions here. We've got good rares, good epics, and some amazing legendaries as well. So without any further ado, well, actually one bit of further ado, let's dive in. I'm also going to do a video. There are also changes in the patch, including some champion rebalances and stuff like that. I'll do a separate video on that though. This one, I just want to focus on these new champions. So the first one we have, I think, is actually one of the weakest ones. Trogor. He is a rare magic affinity attack type from the Barbarian faction. I guess this is supposed to be bloodshed rights, or I mean maybe bloodshe rights. I don't know. Is it like a banshee but made of blood? I don't know. Bloodshed rights, attacks one enemy, places increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns if this attack is critical. It's the small version of increased attack. This seems pretty poor. Maniacal chopping is next. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 20% chance at putting a stun debuff for 1 turn. This goes to a 3-turn cooldown when booked and a 30% chance per hit to stun. It's okay. It depends how hard it hits, but it's not really that good. And then Leave Them Gutted, his A3, is an AoE hit. 30% chance of increasing the cooldowns of each target skill by 2 turns. 5-turn cooldown. This goes down to 4-turn cooldown, goes up to a 40% chance. I actually think this is decent. Like, for an early game player, I think he's an okay option. I probably wouldn't bother taking him up to level 60, but for early game arena, like trying to get into gold arena for your missions or whatever early on, that's not bad. An AoE attack with a 40% chance to increase cooldowns. This basically, it's a mini basher, basically, who's in turn a mini warlord. It's okay. It's okay. So yeah, I say early game only. Next up, we have Spymaster, and I'm pretty hyped for this guy. This guy is really good. He's only a rare. Force Affinity, HP based for the Bannerlords. I know for a fact he has almost 20,000 base HP, so he's really good HP. Spymaster's Blade attacks one enemy, 40% chance of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target by 1 turn, and this goes up to a 60% chance. That's a really good A1. That is fantastic. Like you guys saw in my video on counterattack for Hydra, I think it was out yesterday or the day before, we put in Sigmund the High Shield, who does a similar thing. Legendary does a similar thing, and it's very useful with counterattack. Put him in Revenge accessories as well, and he's really going to help you controlling and removing buffs from that Hydra. I think it's a great move. Then A2, Directed Sabotage, attacks all enemies, 50% chance of putting block buffs for 2 turns. This goes up to a 60% chance to place block buffs on a 4-turn cooldown. And this is also, I think, phenomenal. This is really good, right? Block buffs is the most important thing to bring against the Hydra. It stops Head of Mischief stealing stuff, it stops Poison Cloud being put on, it stops ally protection, stops the Head of Wrath mega buffing himself. It's phenomenal, and it's a really rare skill. It's a very premium skill. It's difficult to get. So yeah, he's going to be a fantastic option, right? He's a really good option, an accessible option, so that you can get that important thing. It's not 100% reliable. It's only 60% chance, and it's got a long cooldown. But you combine that with this, and he's a very good answer for a lot of players to Hydra, and to making Hydra a much less painful experience. Also consider as Force Affinity, this could make him very useful on some rotations. Like, for example, right now, Ugo is amazing. Ugo is an epic. Now, Ugo is obviously way better than this guy, no doubt about that. But Ugo is blue affinity, so if you're going up against a lot of red affinity heads, you're really going to struggle. And outside of that, you're kind of looking to void epics like Umbral Enchantress that you probably don't have or may not have. You're looking to legendaries, which you probably don't have. This guy is a super accessible option. Unfortunately, we just had a 2x Ancients event, but if you can pick up an extra one of this guy during the fusion, it might be worth doing, especially if you're earlier mid-game and you don't have access to many block buff champions. In the next 2x event, hold on to a Spymaster. Again, he's a HP-based champion. He is tanky. Even get him up to just level 50, put him in some tank gear, and just let him go. Revenge accessories if you've got them, and just let him go in there with like 200 accuracy. He's going to make your normal Hydra run much better. Then finally, so I'm going on this guy. I love this guy. Finally, Cloak and Dagger. This has counterattack as well. Amazing. Puts counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. That goes so well with his A1. That's really, really good. When ascended, it also can put Provoke on 2 random enemies. This has a 5-turn cooldown, 100% chance to provoke. So this move is again, I'd say it's mostly a Hydra thing. The provoke obviously does nothing against the Hydra, but we don't really care. It means he's a little bit more useful elsewhere in the game, especially if you're a newer player. This is not too bad. So yeah, I think he's a great champion. I think he's really good. This, out of all the rares they've added to the game in recent times, this guy has to be the best by far of all the rares they've added recently. Like, this guy is so good. 1 second, I've got a call. All right, I'm back. And I call about the shopping. Gotta get those groceries. Okay, next up we've got Medicus then. She's a rare Spirit Affinity support champ for the High Elves. Actually, also, speaking of the best rare they've ever added to the game in the time I've been playing, probably the best rare ever in the time I've been playing. In the time I've been playing, for about a year and a half, I don't think they've added any High Elves in either Epic or Rare category. I don't think they've added any until Medicus. So, Dual Scalpel attacks one enemy 2 times. Okay, this is terrible. Restraints attacks all enemies. Has a 50% chance of putting 15% decreased speed for 2 turns. Goes up to 70% chance. So she's probably reasonably tanky. It's a weak version of decreased speed. Honestly, going up against the Hydra, decreased speed is nice, but it is the small version. You probably have Vizix, you know, after playing the game for a few months, which is about the time you'll be taking on the Hydra, so I'm not too convinced. Stimulant Elixir puts increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, also puts increased speed, the small version of both increased defense and the small version of increased speed on this champion for 2 turns, 3 turn cooldown. I wouldn't bother building her. I think she's just too weak. These buffs are too small. She's terrible. Cagebound is up next. He's a rare Void defense based on the Lizardman faction. He's got a cool model as well. This is a new model. That's really cool. Twisted Spike attacks one enemy, puts a shield buff on this champion for 1 turn, equal to 10% of their max HP. Okay, that's not too bad. Decent-ish. Could be good against Scarab Boss, maybe. Swordbreak Cage attacks all enemies, 75% books up to 100% chance of putting the small decreased attack debuff for 2 turns on a 3 turn cooldown. Maybe it hits reasonably hard, but not amazing. And then Bound to Serve it's another cooldown. Puts ally protection buff on all allies except him for 2 turns. Also puts continuous heal buff on him for 1 turn. Now this is the small version of ally protection, but that's still really good, and giving him a continuous heal helps him go through this. This has a 3 turn cooldown. I'd actually say this move is quite good. I think, again, early game, I think he's a good clan boss champion early game. I think he falls off very quickly though, but I mean, going into your clan boss and giving you ally protection to your whole team will help you stay alive. He heals himself up a bit. He puts a shield on himself to mitigate that damage. Weak version of decreased attack. I think he's okay, but only early game. Right, next we're into the epics. We have Filja, or Filia, probably Filia. I feel you, bro. I feel you. The dwarf faction, sort of Scandinavian pronunciation, right? Dwarf faction, attack, epic, magic affinity. All right, let's check out her moves. Elder's Judgment attacks one enemy 2 times, decreases the target's max HP by 10% of the damage inflicted. Cannot decrease single enemy's max HP by more than 50%. This actually gets 30% damage from books, so this might hit pretty hard. And this could be a good scarab killing thing, right? Giving you decreased max HP. If it hits hard, it's okay. Actually, it's pretty good. Crushing Eternities up next. Attacks one enemy. 75% chance to fully deplete their turn meter. Goes to 100% chance on a 4-turn cooldown. Yeah, this is a decent A2 as well. It's not too bad. Again, pretty good against that Scarab boss, right? Reduce his turn meter, be smacking down his max HP. You'd probably want to put her in a blood shield accessory, so she gives herself a shield whenever she attacks. And she could be a very good Scarab boss champion, which is good. And I think she's good affinity for both of them. I think one of them might be red affinity actually, so that's kind of a bummer. I think they're red and green. Or red and blue? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Righteous Evocation then is up next. Attacks all enemies, fills this champion's turn meter by 15%, and heals them by 15% of the damage inflicted. If this attack is critical, well, she's a damage dealer, so she will have 100% crit. Books up with good bit of damage and some more healing. 3-turn cooldown. So 3-turn cooldown AoE attack. It's going to heal her by a decent chunk. Going to give her 15% turn meter. I think it's fine. And then Boon Chanter passive. If this champion has 2 or fewer buffs at the start of the turn, gives her 50% increased attack and 30% increased crit damage for 1 turn. hey, that's kind of cool. So I think it would just buff her for that turn and then fall off. So yeah, I'm looking at her and I'm thinking this looks like a good champion for Scarab, right? This looks like a good champion for Scarab. You put her in Blood Shield accessories. She's got wave clear to get you to the Scarab boss. The Scarab steals buffs, not a huge deal. She gives herself increased attack and crit damage for a turn, so she can hit him hard, and then it falls off again. He can't steal them back. She can deplete his turn meter, decrease his max HP. I think she's decent. Depends how hard she hits. Is she useful anywhere else? I think she'd be okay, right? A bit of turn meter and an AoE hit. 3 turn cooldown is a good cooldown for an AoE. I think she's okay. Yeah, and nice thing about her is that it means that you don't need to bring an increased attack champion with you, right? 2 or fewer buffs. So if you're earlier game, mid game, and you're looking for a champion to come in and clear through dungeons, and like you don't have an Arbiter or a Seeker or something to boost attack, she comes in, she gives herself increased attack and crit damage anyway to hit hard. So I think she's actually, for mid game, I think she's a good mid game epic. Good mid game epic, not good late game. Next up, is that all the epics? No, it's not. Well, I don't know why this guy's... these are the fusion. Oh, there you go. Look, so these are specifically the fusions. You're going to be collecting these 4 rares, and then you're going to be putting them into her. You're going to make 4 copies of her, and then you're going to be making Krato. So that's what they're going to do. I heard people saying that wasn't the case, but looks like that is in fact the case. So there you go. Okay, let's check out Krato here first. Sure, why the hell not? Actually, no, I'm going to come back to him. Let's do the epics first. So next up, we've got Andrissia. Perhaps these epics, some of these other epics that are not part of the fusion, might still be rewards for some of the tournaments and events. Maybe. I've no idea. Perhaps they're just being added. So you actually have a new High Elf Void Epic. Defense base, so that's pretty cool. Andressia. Censorius Bludgeon. How many times have you used the word Censorius in your life? Attacks one enemy, 40% chance of putting 30% decreased crit damage for 2 turns. Goes up to a 70% chance. This is terrible. This is a really bad debuff. Like, it's okay in Arena. It's okay. But everywhere else in the game, enemies just don't crit you enough. So it's one of the worst debuffs, so it's not great. Mind Prison's up next. Attacks one enemy, 75%, goes up to 100% chance of putting stun debuff for 1 turn if the target does not have any active buffs. 100% chance of putting stun debuff for 2 turns if they do have any active buffs. That has a 3 turn cooldown. I actually think this is a pretty decent move, right? So single target guaranteed stun for a turn. If they've any active buffs for 2 turns, a 2-turn stun is pretty good. I think this is nice. This is decent. It's okay. This is where she really gets good, though. I've seen this already. Pointed Justice. I think she's pretty cool. Attacks all enemies, 75. Goes to 100% chance of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs by 2 turns. Nice. And increases the duration of all increased defense buffs on all allies by 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. I think this is a really good move. I just did a guide on Rian the Conjurer, and I've been talking about how buff stripping, buff removal is going to be a really important part of Arena and PvP in the coming few months, especially with Stone Skin, with all these new sets they're adding into the game. There's really powerful buffs out there. Having her as a void, so no weak hits that can come in, most buffs are pretty much just 2 turns. So it's effectively, for most intentions, it is a full buff strip of an enemy team in PvP. Yeah, that's a solid move. That's really solid. It's good. And then she comes back around next turn. If they put buffs back up on themselves, she then puts a 2-turn stun. That's good, but that's not all. Heartstrong, start of each turn, puts 50% ally protection buff for 2 turns on the ally with the lowest max HP. Will not place it on this champion. Also puts a 25% strengthen and 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns. So I believe that the first part has no cooldown. I think that just every time she takes a turn, she puts out an ally protection on whoever has the lowest max HP. That's pretty great. I wonder if she just keeps refreshing it on the one target or if she'll start bouncing it around. But it's kind of like mini Necret. It's okay. And then puts a strength and an increased defense on her for 2 turns. That'll help her stay alive so that she can keep ally protecting. I think it's a good passive. Now, the difference with Necret's passive is way better. Number 1, Necret does it at the start of the round. So even if the enemy team goes first in Arena, Necret has already put ally protection, strengthen, and block debuffs on his ally, right? So they have them at the start of the round. She would need to go first, and she only does ally protection. Then Necret also has a monstrous amount of base HP, and he gives a huge shield to anyone that gets attacked while they have his ally protection on, and his ally protection cannot be removed. So Necret is like way better, but she does give you an option for mini Necret. So for example, if you have her, I comparatively to Necret, I'd have her going pretty fast. If you could put her even in a stone skin set, you could even run her just earlier mid game, progressing in arena. She could be great for that. Make her pretty quick with high accuracy. She goes early on in the round, strips off all the enemy buffs, and puts ally protection on your nuker. Then maybe they do get a go and they have a chance to smack you, but there's a chance your nuker survives and then can attack them. Then she locks down their reviver with a stun potentially. I think there's good options here. I think she's a good looking epic. Yeah, I think she's one to watch out for. I'm very excited to see what people can do with her. I think she's strong, and by the way, great for Hydra as well. So the crit rate and the stun won't do much, but a 3-turn cooldown, decreasing all of their buffs as a void, that's really good for Hydra, increasing defense buffs on all allies by a turn. Great for Hydra, extending that increased defense. Then also putting out the ally protection as well to help your squishiest person stay alive in the Hydra. I think she's a solid option for Hydra too. Next we have Thresk, who is an epic force affinity attack champion for the Dark Elves, and she has a new debuff, very exciting. But first up, Jeweled Ability, attacks an enemy twice. Each hit has a 25% chance of increasing the duration of a random debuff by 1 turn. This goes up to a 45% chance. You probably give her Sniper, or you could give her Sniper, 50% chance per hit. Increase, I think it's actually a pretty good A1. That's a solid A1. Dress down then, her A2 attacks one enemy 3 times. Each hit has a 40% chance of removing a random buff. That goes up to a 50% chance. Sorry, excuse me, a 60% chance of removing a random buff from the target. Again, I actually think this is a good solid A2 as well. That's a good amount of buff removal. Triple hitter. If it does good damage, it could be good. Then Hates Flowers, attacks all enemies, 50%, goes up to 75% chance of putting decreased resistance debuff for 2 turns. So this is a new debuff. I'm not sure exactly how much it decreases resistance by, but this is a very, very exciting new debuff. There's also a new increased resistance debuff, and they're going to completely change the meta of this game, just in so many ways. This move is bad though. Unfortunately, I think she's the only champion in the game that has this right now. But unfortunately, this move is just bad, okay? So it's a 4-turn cooldown AoE nuker. So if you want to build her to smack, she's probably not going to have enough accuracy to decrease the resistance of anyone that matters. The people that you want to decrease resistance of, they are going to have too much resistance for her to hit through, most likely. Otherwise, she's just not going to do any damage, and it's like, why bring her in that case? The other issue is that she's the nuker, which means that you probably want her going last after your debuffers, in which case your debuffers have already gone against their full resistance. Then she decreases resistance. So this to me doesn't make any sense. Now, when this debuff gets added to support type champions or tanky champions that will be going first or earlier, this is going to be an insane debuff that's going to just change everything. But on her, I actually think just on an attack champion, on their AoE attack, I just don't think it makes any sense. So unfortunately, I'd say it's pretty terrible. And then inflicts 10% more damage against targets whose resistance is lower than their accuracy. Fine. Increase ally crit rate in all battles by 12%. So I think she's only okay. I think she's exciting right now because it's a new debuff, but I think she's actually probably a pretty bad champion. I'm not super seeing it, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. Can you think of any situation where you would actually use her? I think it's like, yo, it's a bad champion with decreased resistance. Check it out, but there's going to be better options soon. Sir Armitage coming in there. Force attack champion, epic for the Bannerlords. Nobleman's Mace, attack one enemy 2 times. First hit, 40% chance of putting decreased defense for 2 turns. Second hit, 40% chance of putting decreased speed for 2 turns. That goes up to 50% chance on each of them. So every time you A1s, 50% chance of decreased defense and decreased speed. That's a really good A1, especially with revenge accessories or counterattack buff, anything like that, especially for Hydra, anywhere in the game actually. This is really good. Ring True removes all debuffs from this champion and attacks all enemies. So I don't know. So he's an attack. He's very much clearly a damage dealer. Yeah, ignoring defense. Don't know how hard he hits, which is really the defining thing. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. Like if this hits hard, he's actually a good champion. He's actually good if this hits hard. If it doesn't hit that hard, he's not that good. But a self cleanse with an AoE attack, nice. Could be okay for Hydra. Good debuffs there. Unshakable Valor. Attacks one enemy. Ignores 30% of target's defense. Not bad. Gets some nice damage. Nice damage on all the bucks, actually. And not too many bucks needed at all. Puts 50% increased attack and 30% increased crit damage on him for 2 turns if he kills an enemy. These buffs cannot be removed. Oh, okay. Ally speed in arena battles. So I think he's a good mid-game arena champion, right? I think he's a good potential mid-game arena champion. You send him into your arena, you probably put him in like revenge accessories, which are gettable early game through the clan shop, yeah? So he's got chances to do his A1, which is a good hitter. On the first turn, he can potentially just one-shot their damage dealer with that ignore defense, so really good chance to one-shot somebody. Then he comes back around the second turn, he removes any debuffs and does his AoE attack. I think that could be a pretty good option, actually. And he'd have increased attack and crit damage. He's going to be good for faction wars as well. Going to keep himself safe. Good boss stuff. Good arena aura if you're early in the game. So I actually think this guy's a solid epic. Late game, no good. But mid game, yeah, good. Okay, then we got the Legendaries. Haha, the Legendaries. Let's go back to our Fusion. I'll save the Fusion guy for second to last. Let's look at this guy first. He's got the new increased resistance buff. Borogar the Elder. Legendary, HP based, Force Affinity, Dwarf. Looks cool. Reminds me a bit of, he's like a dwarf version. He looked like a dwarf from Warhammer. It's kind of like Balthazar Gelt, but a dwarf. Antique Staff. Attacks one enemy. 50% chance. Goes up to a 65% chance of putting increased defense buff for 1 turn on the ally with the lowest HP. Won't place it on this champion. 100% chance instead if this attack is critical. So the bucks are kind of bad on this. Or I guess you could just not build him to crit. Yeah, none of his other attacks do anything. So actually, funny enough, it's kind of weird. I probably would build him just to not crit. Because he probably doesn't do any damage. The rest of his stuff are not attacks, right? And it's just a good chance to put increased defense on an ally. That's actually a nice move. I don't think we've nothing quite like this in the game. We've got champions that do this with like continuous heal or shields, but this is the first one I believe that does anything like it with increased defense. So it's actually pretty cool, A1. Souls of Old Stone removes 1 random debuff from all allies, puts a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns, equal to 20% of this champion's max HP on a 3-turn cooldown. So it depends how high his HP is. The better champions like Sigmund, the High Shield, Brogni are putting shields equal to 30% max HP. So this seems a little bit weak. It does have 1 random debuff cleanse. I think it's only average. It's not great, but it's a decent move. It's good, but it's not mind-shattering. It's just okay. Rune of Energy is next. 50% increased resistance and 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns with a 4-turn cooldown. This is amazing. This is so good. This is so good. Yeah, new buff. I believe he's the only champion in the game with this buff, and it is amazing. Increased speed as well. So you could easily throw this guy. Yeah, you could throw him into your arena teams, increase speed, increase resistance, into a tanky team. And that's going to be so hard for the enemy to deal with. Like, what do they even do? Put this guy in a stone skin set, right? Then he's going to come in and increase resistance. And it's like, yeah, I think this is a very good move. Very, very good move. Good for Hydra as well. Really good for Hydra, right? Increased speed and resistance. You stop the Head of Mischief stealing your buffs. He brings the shield. Is actually great for Hydra with the debuff removal. That's great. Can put out increased defense. Allies receive 10% less damage from champions whose resistance is lower or equal to theirs. This might be only champions. This probably doesn't work against bosses, but that's still good. Ally resist in all battles. This guy is going to be, I think, really good for PvP. Could be really good for some Doom Tower fights as well. That increased resistance, that could be huge. And he's really good for Hydra as well. I think this is a great legendary. I'd be very excited to see him in action. Oh, we're going to come back to Yumiko. She is nutty. Let's go to Archbishop Pintroy first. What a name. Spirit Affinity Legendary support from the Sacred Order. Author of Fates attacks 1 enemy, transfers 1 random debuff from this champion to the target, and has a 75% chance of stealing a random buff from the target. I think this is actually a great A1. Scales really well with counterattack. Yeah, it's just a good A1. Great A1. Solid. Good with counterattack. Good with revenge accessories. Great for Hydra, that sort of thing. Holy Word then is up next. Puts 50% increased accuracy on all allies for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies, puts a 100% heal reduction debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, and has a 75 bucks up to 100% chance of placing block buffs debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Champions from Demon Spawn, Undead Horde, Knight Revenant factions cannot resist these debuffs. This is a top tier move. This is amazing. That's so good. Increase accuracy, AoE heal reduction, will do a bit of damage as well, and puts block buffs. That's so good. Now, these might be tied in with the attack, so he might weak hit against blue affinity and not be able to put heal reduction and block buffs. But nonetheless, this is amazing. With a 3-turn cooldown, that's so good for Hydra. Means you can ditch increase accuracy. You can bring in lower accuracy champions and they'll still get their moves off. Heal reduction doesn't do too much, but the block buffs, AoE block buffs, that's also giving your team these nice buffs. That's awesome. For Arena as well, this is fantastic. Increase accuracy is going to help you deal with any of those nasty teams that are running the increase resistance buff. As that becomes more prominent, increase accuracy is going to become more and more important. So that's great. Heal reduction, that's actually really good for Arena too. And then block buffs, 100% chance on a 3-turn cooldown. That's brilliant for Arena. Demon Spawn, Undead Horde, Knight Revenant in Arena. There's some extremely good legendaries in here. I mean, Duchess Lilitu, and she can't resist block buffs or heal reduction. Yo, that's so good. Right? That's so good. That's going to help you take down Duchess teams so easily. That's so good. Kymar's in there as well. Candrafon is in there, and he's good affinity for Candrafon and Duchess. Undead Horde, Sifi. Yeah, Sifi. Rotos. Really good as well. Knight Revenants. Who's in there? In Knight Revenants, Solus is in there. Hegemon. Yeah, this is an amazing move for any sort of late game content. Really good. Gleam of Glory is up next. Heal all allies by 30% of their max HP. Okay. Puts a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. If 4 or more allies are alive, also puts a shield buff on each ally for 2 turns, equal to 30% chance of their max HP. 4-turn cooldown. So this is like a super good Hydra move again. Nice chunk of healing, increased defense, and then a really nice shield as well. 4 or more allies. I don't know if it includes him. If it includes him, it will work in Arena so long as everyone's alive. If it doesn't include him, it's not going to work in Arena, which is a nerf to him, but he'd still be good for Arena because of these 2 first moves. I think he's still good. Yeah, I think he's still good. Be better than for Doom Tower, and for Hydra specifically, it becomes a really good move. So yeah, what a champ. Great champ. Ally accuracy in all battles, and then Splendor, his passive, removes all decreased defense debuffs and weaken debuffs from this champion at the start of each turn. So that's, again, more of an Arena thing, I would say. It's easy to keep him alive. Yeah, even if he doesn't have, much resistance or anything like that, or Stone Skin. If you give him like a reaction accessory or 3, he can probably survive the first turn, and then he's going to be cleansing himself. Yeah, debuffing the enemy. Yeah, very nice. I think he's good. I think he's going to be especially good actually against more tanky teams. I think that's where he's really going to shine, where he is going to be taking turns before them, and he can block buffs, but he's very good. Yeah, he's very solid. Very solid. What was this? This was new buffs. Oh yeah, okay. So there's actually 25 and 50% chance of resistance stuff. Nice. Okay, first of all, let's talk about Krato Fox Hunter. Now we've got more info on him. So in terms of his books, he needs, 12 books. So it's okay. It's not too bad. Usually fusion legendaries can be really nasty for books. This is it's kind of medium high. It could be worse, to be fair. It could be worse. It could be a lot better, but it could certainly be worse. So he's going to have a 30% chance of putting Weaken on a triple hitter each hit. That's a good A1. His A2 is going to get 20% more damage and has a 3-turn cooldown. And then his A3, unfortunately, is going to be a 4-turn cooldown AoE with a 100% chance to block active skills and 20% more damage there. Yeah, so in terms of how he's looking, I've already talked about him in a previous video. Looking at the books, so he's slightly weaker in the sense that this is a 4-turn cooldown, so it's a very long cooldown. With Yumiko, he's going to be much stronger, where he gets extra turn and resets his skill so he can get back to Suppression Ward more often. He gets extra turns when he kills people with Bedevil with Yumiko, which will get him back to this more often, and this ignoring resistance. So yeah, he's going to be much stronger there. I think this champion is solid. I'm going to talk more about him as well in the fusion plan. I think he's good. I think he's going to be worth using. We'll see what his multipliers are like. But yeah, he's cool. Very interesting thing as well. It does look like damage inflicted cannot be increased by this champion's masteries or ally passives. So this is very interesting. I don't know if Helm Smasher will work. Most of our masteries, in fact, let me go in here. I'm on my free-to-play account. Excuse me. Most masteries are not going to work. So like Heart of Glory won't work. Shield Breaker isn't going to work. Ruthless Ambush won't work. Wrath of the Slain. Killstreak, no. War Master maybe in Giant Slayer. I think that you might build him still for this. You could give him the crit rate, crit damage, increase speed when he kills stuff. That's not upping his damage. You give him chance to decrease cooldown. I think that's going to be very good for him. Blood Shield as well. and then give him crit damage with Flawless Execution. That might be the way you go, or potentially Giant Slayer if you're using him for PvE, maybe with the A1, but I think probably Flawless Execution. So you might go that way and still get good damage out of him, but it's just not going to be quite as much as other damage dealers. But then it's the fact that he ignores enemy passive skills or masteries. So again, all of the defensive masteries aren't going to work against him, which is very strong, and he can knock through Duchess Lilitu's passive. I definitely will go for him. I think he's well worth going for. I think he could potentially be very, very solid on his own as a good option. Maybe not your main arena nuker, but a very good option against enemies that are stacking passives and masteries to survive. I think he'd be very good there. And if you ever get Yumiko, they could be an insane pair, because Yumiko is hella OP. Oh my god. Legendary Void support for the Shadowkin. Wear Claws, attack one enemy 2 times. Each hit steals 7.5% of the target's turn meter if she has 50% HP or more, and then heals her if her HP is less than 50. So the heal's a bit unfortunate. That seems pretty weak. Maybe if she's running some PvE, but I think she's going to be more your arena goddess. So that's a bit weak, but the turn meter steal is pretty nice. Her A2 then, Destiny's Mirror, attacks one enemy, 100% chance when booked of placing Hex with a 3-turn cooldown. When an enemy tries to place debuffs on either this champion or an ally as a passive effect, has a 55% chance. Let's be honest, you're booking her up. 75% chance of transferring those debuffs to a random enemy under a Hex debuff placed by this champion. This happens before any debuffs are placed on the initial target. Holy crap. Holy crap. So whenever debuffs are attempted to be placed on your team, so long as anyone has a Hex out, there's a 75% chance that any debuffs attempted to be put on your team are going to be redirected to the enemy instead with Hex. That's insane. And the fact that it happens before they're placed on the initial target means that even if you would have resisted them, right, if they've got, like, would this work against a Trunda? Like, what happens if a Trunda does this, yeah? And Trunda, built with no accuracy, attempts to place her stun. Would it go, okay, well, you know, it was before they were placed, you attempted to place a stun, redirect the stun, and Trunda doesn't do her second hit? Would that be how it works? I'm not sure with that particular interaction. Not on the test server, unfortunately, but subscribe so I can go and test these things. It'd be super cool. We need to hit 8,000 subs, I think, for that. Though they haven't added me to the content creator program yet at all, so I cry. Platium no like me for some reason. I think they just don't check their emails that much. I don't know. But yeah, amazing. This is so good. 30% chance instead against bosses. That's 50% chance against bosses. So, like, you put a Hex on Bommel, and there's a 50% chance that all of the bombs are going to be redirected onto him. Like, that's so good. Whenever someone fills the... this only works when Krato, this last bit here, I believe. Whenever someone fills the turn meter of an enemy under a Hex debuff placed by this champion's turn meter will be filled instead. This only works when Krato Fox Hunters on the same team. So, literally, anytime, if Krato is there, Arbiter tries to turn meter boost, any Hexes that are out, she just comes in and steals them all. Right? If you put out an AoE Hex, like with Mithrala Lifebane, Arbiter does her turn meter boost, it just gives Yumiko a turn straight away. Although, that being said, it's unlikely that Yumiko will need that, because Dance of Time, the new best move in the game, quite possibly, 5-turn cooldown when booked, decrease the cooldown of ally skills by 3 turns, and increases the cooldown of all enemy skills by 3 turns, doesn't affect her own skills. Oh my god, it's amazing. So, this replaces Prince Kymar for, like, PvE content, right? Resetting all your team's cooldowns, resetting Seer, and letting Seer do her nuke, and blasting through waves. She can do this instead of Kymar, which is amazing. But increasing the enemy skill cooldowns, that is so good by 3 turns. It's effectively a mini Warlord and mini Kymar all in the one move. Yeah, she goes first and she wins you the arena battle in most circumstances, because the enemy's just forced to use their A1. So good. And just so versatile. She's going to be a goddess in PvE like Kymar. She's going to be a goddess in PvP like Warlord. Just a goddess. She's just insane. One of the best champion, arguably, in the game. One of the best champions in the game, for sure. It's so insane. Then Deep Cover. It's not over yet, though. Deep Cover puts a perfect veil on this champion for 2 turns at the start of each round. This champion is immune to all debuffs if they're under Veil or Perfect Veil, so she's got immunity and damage reduction from Perfect Veil and can't be directly targeted by damage dealers at the start. Whenever Veil or Perfect Veil... Okay, and I think this last part only works when Krato's there. Whenever a Veil or Perfect Veil buff is placed on an enemy, has a 75% chance of stealing the buff. This happens before the buff is placed on the initial target, only available when Krato's on the same team. So again, I think she'd steal them even if there's like a block buffs thing happening, which will, again, if she steals a Veil or Perfect Veil, she again gets immunity to debuffs, which is amazing. I think this is specifically really a Duchess counter, right? Duchess tries to Veil or Perfect Veil her team, and there's just, if Krato's in there, there's a huge chance that she steals it. So her and Krato together are just like, Duchess, bye-bye. We're stealing your Perfect Veil, we're putting everything on cooldown, Krato hits through your passive. Super good. Ally accuracy in all battles by 60 is a decent aura. You could use her as the arena lead against slower teams to just make sure that you get this Dance of Time move off. She is a god tier. She's god tier. Like, this champion is so good. Everything she does is insane. Everything she does is insane. It's going to be very exciting to see the teams that people can come up with this champion over the next while. Downside is you're never going to get her because she's a void legendary. So good luck. You're never going to get her. But if you do, you are so lucky. And I think at the very least, you want to complete this fusion. I think the fusion is solid. I think he's good and he's unique. But I would complete him anyway, just to use him with Yumiko for the off chance that you ever do pull her. If you ever do pull her, you're going to want to have him. 100% you're going to want to have Krato as well, because they're going to be amazing. So there you go, guys. They're all the champions. They look so good. Oh my god, so good. We have multiple really good legendaries. I'd be happy to get any of these legendaries. The epics I think are decent early game. Maybe this Dark Elf is bad, but the other epics are good early game. She's probably good even into the late game. Krato is a good fusion. This one is more mid game, and then we've a couple of decent rares, especially the Spymaster guy. I think is well worth checking out for early mid game players for sure. So a great selection of champions across rare, epic, and legendary. Lots of good ones. So much better than the last drop of legendaries. Like Yumiko versus Yingwan is just like, oh, the difference is insane. Let me know what you think though, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye. I'm gonna go check out the patch notes now, and I'll do a video on that too. So I'll see you for that.